Thank you, Ahmed, for joining, and
Welcome.
thanks for taking out time on such a short notice. This is a topic, this crowd strike which hit everyone on last Friday, and I heard that a lot of people, got impacted. Flights are got delayed. One of my nephews just sitting right across me. His flight was cancelled and delayed. In fact, he started from Dubai, got delayed for a few hours, then landed to Malaysia. AirAsia again got delayed. So there are impacts in my house as well. In my office, my a lot of vendors' screens got blue. So because this is a very hot topic, right?
It is.
So it's a good idea to look into it. Within our team, it didn't happen, but vendors' team did happen. So tell us about this thing that what happened, how it whole thing started. So
Yeah.
I will just play dumb as an audience, and I'll ask what happened. Ahmed, tell us what happened.
Yeah, sure. Sure. No, for those who were hit, I think it was a very tough day, and it still continues to be a tough day, tough period, as recovery will take time.
Okay.
But I think it is also an occasion for every team that is not hit to say, what if it happened to me? So there is this,
Mhm.
like we need to increase readiness so that if someday something happens, we ensure that there is the resilience needed behind.
Mhm.
And then there are the indirect impacts. So basically, when this happened, for example, there was some payment that were not going through. And if you look into the details, you will see that it's not Visa or MasterCard that is impacted, it is some processor in the chain. So actually, you can be impacted because not because you are directly impacted, meaning your teams are not having the blue screen of death and so on,
Mhm.
but you can be impacted because one of your main suppliers is impacted, or because you have any partner with whom you are integrated in your architecture that is impacted. And that's where it's important, like even if you are not impacted, to keep monitoring the situation to see if you might have some impact down the road.
Yeah.
And then there is also the crisis communication part, because the organization does not have directly the information that you are not impacted. So you need to go and inform the top management of what is happening, and you need to manage communication to the teams as well on what to expect. It was a tough day. So it started, I think, around 6 a.m. or little earlier, US Eastern time.
Mhm.
And what we were seeing is that multiple airlines, I think this was the very first impact that have been seen, was that multiple airlines was not able to manage the booking and to print the boarding passes. What happened is that the first analysis showed that there was an update that was pushed to an antivirus, Crowdstrike, which is, by the way, generally considered as a very good product from antivirus protection side. And that update conflicted with some files in Windows operating system. And this created a situation where the laptop or the endpoint or the servers in some specific cases entered into some kind of infinite loop of restarting. So the laptop was not able, or the endpoint was not able to restart.
Question.
Uh, yeah,
Question. My apologies. I'll be a little bit interactive because this is something I also don't understand, and I really want to, make this as knowledgeable or as breakdown so a normal person can understand. So when you say that an update happened, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Normally for firewall, it was a patch or it was a firewall first thing.
it was an update
An
pushed
update.
to the antivirus.
Oh, so
To the CrowdStrike agent, which is a protection tool against viruses and malwares,
okay.
mainly. And that
Server.
update,
So
yes,
server pushed it, or for example, I have a laptop. On my laptop, I said auto update. Normally patches we don't manually go and patches, so we turn everything auto, right? Our admin do that, right?
Right.
So
Right.
now,
And that's a very good question. Yeah.
yeah, so this is how it happens from my laptop, or server pushed it down. How it happens?
Yeah. So the policies to update and to patch are diverse, but in this specific case was the server pushing the update.
Wow.
And if you were on auto update, and my understanding is that it is a mandatory setting in this kind of setups,
Okay.
then you cannot avoid that update to be installed. Now, this is again a very interesting point because, and I commented a lot about it because the best practices in the past used to say, do not be in auto update or in in this kind of setup because this might happen. But
Okay.
then there are, I would say, two exceptions to it that we've seen in the best practices published is that if it is an antivirus or if it is an operating system, it is good to have the auto update setup because sometimes it will push what we call zero-day vulnerabilities patches. So the zero-day vulnerabilities are basically vulnerabilities that we didn't know before
Mhm.
that happened, for example, because of something new or for something that has been published. And in that case, the operating system or the antivirus will push an update and you need to have it installed quickly so you are not vulnerable.
Okay.
And what happened here is that the server pushed, or the CrowdStrike server pushed that update. And to my understanding, there was like no simple way to avoid it from happening. Now, this also goes hand in hand with other configurations, including the Microsoft configuration that also accepts such auto updates, and with some global configurations that also accept auto update. But it's concerning to see how much such a configuration can have as impact. And in the past, also from vendors' perspective, when pushing an update, the vendor should deploy updates gradually. Like they should not shoot it in every endpoint. I think the reports I have read from Microsoft mentioned 1.5 billion endpoints that were impacted.
In one shot.
In one shot. In one shot, and on a Friday, and we are also in a summer, so like if you are having that kind of update, generally you will do it during open hours. You will when businesses like can do it in maybe in the month of April or in the month of May, but the month of July and on a Friday, it's, I would say, not the easiest period to do massive updates on. And generally, the update should go gradually, meaning that you will need to update a subset of
As-
endpoints. It can be on a geography, it can be on maybe 10% or 5% or even 1% to start with. Like if we are speaking about 1.5, 8.5 billion endpoints impacted, if you push to 1%, you will be already updating 85 million endpoints. So that is already sufficient to see if there is an issue before pushing everywhere. And I think
Yes.
that is a
Sorry.
real issue. Yeah,
So sorry, just to add, see, you are absolutely right. So once you push something, until unless you don't have a confirmation that it was successful,
yeah,
next batch should not go in, right?
right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, and that is what happened. And so today, I mean, that massive update impacted like billions of endpoints instantly. And the complexity of the fix, I mean, the fix cannot happen remotely. From the moment your endpoint enters into that restart loop, you cannot update it remotely. You will need to manually go endpoint by endpoint and solve it, which is also a complexity when you have a lot of endpoints. And that explains what happened to airlines actually, because they have a lot of endpoints in the airports,
Mhm.
and those endpoints like need to go through manual patches one by one. And the ground personnel does not have access or cannot do it, and they are not IT professionals. So the time it is fixed, you have already flights that are canceled. You cannot book people on flights. You cannot provide, boarding passes. And yeah, that created a chaotic situation, I think, leading in the US alone to 3,000 flights that were canceled on Friday. That's a huge amount. There is
So
this
question.
animation, yeah, there is this animation from Flight Radar where you see the traffic in the US slowing down at some point of time. There are a lot of plays, and then just out of a sudden they start reducing. Yeah.
So question, right? When see for just for the layman audience, right? When we say endpoints for audience, endpoint means your laptops, your desktop, your server. That's what endpoint is.
Yes.
So I also heard that within 1 hour, Microsoft reverted back that thingy. But here you are saying that one has to go. So there are two questions, right? One has to go and manually do it, which we are saying 8 billion endpoints or laptop or whatever desktop has to be restarted quickly, right? But you also mentioned that. So again, I heard that Microsoft reverted back within an hour. That is conflicting with the idea of there was a loop. Because when there's a loop, can you go and crash it and repatch? How does this thing happen?
I think we need to separate the communication part from the reality of the ground. I think like the vendors like Microsoft or CrowdStrike should make a communication and
Hmm.
explain what happened and also publish fixes.
Hmm.
So for example, if for some reason your
Hmm.
endpoint didn't update, they will get a fresher update pushed to them that will not have that flow. So basically, if for some reason your endpoint didn't get that update that makes it crash, meanwhile, they removed that old update and put another update. Say, for example, your endpoint didn't restart, was not working at all, like you had a closed laptop.
Yeah, shut
You
down.
didn't start it early morning,
Yes.
okay? When you will start it at 11 a.m. or 12 a.m. or 12 US time after the fix was published,
Hmm.
you will not enter in that, you will not get that
Oh,
blue screen of death, okay?
that 1 hour was
But
okay.
but if it happened, like it already happened, like you need to go and fix it manually. And after it is fixed manually, you are getting a fresh update, so it does not happen again. So that is the kind of updates that has been published. But if it entered into that, if that faulty update happened and you got that blue screen of death, there was, to my knowledge, no possibility to remotely and massively fix things because it is at the I mean, it is not even connecting to the internet. I mean, physically, there is not even an internet connection that is active to make you get something from the outside. The endpoint or the laptop or the computer is not starting, like you are not getting the drivers, you are not getting a LAN connection or a Wi-Fi connection or whatever. It is stopping at the very first steps of the boot. Even your drivers are not active. So how come you can get some remote update? Physically and technically, it does not seem to me something that is feasible or feasible at scale.
So what we are saying here is when we hear a news that Microsoft fixed it within 1 hour means if in that 1 hour your laptop was shut down, you are in the traffic, you didn't reach the office,
Yep,
for any case, actually which cannot be true for servers because servers are running 24 by 7. This must be true for really endpoint, which is your laptop. So if
yep,
you haven't started your laptop, just for the audience, and you started after the fix was done,
yep.
then your laptop
You are
might
getting a clean fix.
be
Then you are getting a clean fix. Yeah,
now.
indeed.
Now, so my this nephew was asking me that, right? They have already fixed it, everything is done. Then now there is delays. So I also want you to comment on this one that it's
Yep,
not only fixing one thing. For example, you have one activity which is very mature, automated. There are next activity which is dependent on this. Then there are chain or hierarchies which is dependent on each other. Now every hierarchy, only few will be as mature as can be, which can restart, where teams will be very good, really jump and restart. So those can come
yep,
really very quickly come back, right? But 90% is not very mature. So this tickle effect, right?
yep,
So maybe they recovered back within a day. But next one of the hierarchy where hundreds more are dependent on that, that one take more than 2 days.
yep,
Everything is waiting for that. Can you comment on this one? This is
yep.
how this
Sure.
whole chain
Yeah,
impacted, right?
sure, sure. I think the recovery part. I think there are two. two components to it. I think the first one is to get the IT systems back up and running, and that is not a simple step. As I mentioned, it requires a manual activity. It requires that you go into the endpoint, the computer, whatever, that you started manually, that you enter in safe mode, that you do a rename or some fix, that you start again the machine in normal mode, and then get the new updates so that you can restart. And you need to do that like in a manual way. Imagine you are a company with 70,000 or 80,000 endpoints or even more, and generally you have went with everything that we went through, going through maybe cutting your IT teams, doing some savings here, some savings there. So what is the real availability of IT staff on the ground to do that kind of patching? It is not that obvious, and that will take time. So all laptops or all endpoints are fixed because what these teams are doing, and it is normal, they are prioritizing the most mission critical systems. But at the end of the day, till the last endpoint is fixed, you are still 100% recovered. So the recovery from IT system perspective takes long. And then you have the cascading effect. I mean, when you have a plane that is delayed, it is not sufficient that you are just getting an updated IT system so that plane can go. That plane has, I don't know how many rotations to do. They
Yeah.
have other people to take from other airports. They will go from airport A to B to C to D, going certain number of rotations with different passengers each time. So from the moment you start to have one plane, just one that is delayed, it's just crazy how much time you need to recover because you are losing your slot on the departure airport. You are losing your slot when you are arriving. When you are arriving, then you are no longer on a priority slot. So meaning that if we need to make you wait, you are the one who is waiting, not the plane who respected its initial time schedule. So all of that multiplied by airports as well impacted, multiple airlines impacted, makes it extremely complex to recover. So many will choose the cancellation option. I have seen like in as I mentioned, 3,000 flights canceled in the US alone. And from the moment you start canceling flights, you will need to rebook people on other flights. And I have a friend who called me and told me, like after have seen my post on LinkedIn, he told me, this is the fifth time. So we were still on Friday. This is the fifth time I am rebooked on another flight and I still didn't take off. So like imagine just for one passenger, they
Hmm.
need like five times to rebook them and they still not booked correctly. So that takes a lot of time to recover. And we have seen the photos from airports worldwide, like people were sleeping on the ground. There was that delay caused, I think, a chain effect.
Yeah. Okay. So one more question comes in, right? It was bit strange because when I was in office, one of my vendors' laptop become blue in within the meeting, and our ones did not. Although both of us are within the one company. This is one question. Second is this this update impacted only corporate level or consumer level as well, who are just home users?
Mm. Um, it impacted mainly companies. Like nothing prevents personal people from to pay for an enterprise grade protection. I mean, it's not something that is forbidden. Like you can go and buy for
Okay.
thousands
So this
something.
was a corporate license patch,
Yes,
not was a
exactly,
one. It's not in.
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Exactly. So it was the corporate tool and with the corporate updates. Uh, Probably either in the organization there were two different policies. Like we can see, like there is, we identify in cybersecurity what we call risk profiles. So risk profiles are a way to categorize who might be riskier than another in an organization from endpoint understanding perspective. And due to that, you can have different policies. So I
Hmm.
give you one example. Let's say, for example, you always connect from your home and you will not be each time asked to enter your MFA, that one-time password to
Yeah.
log in. But the first time you change location, you will be prompted to enter again the MFA. So why this happen? This happens because there is a risk profile associated to it. Say that if you are connecting from your home, now we know that IP, we know that you connect from there, you connected in the past, so it becomes somehow trusted location. But
Hmm.
the day you are changing location or connecting from another country, it's going to be flagged as a suspicious activity till you prove that you are the right person. When
Hmm.
it comes to this situation, we can say that there can be a policy in an organization saying, okay, we do consider contractor laptops or vendor laptops that are provided by our company as little more risky than for the internal ones. This can have, I mean, we can argue about it, why it is like that. It is just an assumption, I think, that has been made at some point of time. It has justifications that contractors are more on the move as they might be working on more than a company, they might be more subject to conflicting policies. So it is better maybe to have auto update on them automatically done. And however, for the internals, let's wait till it is deployed on some endpoints before pushing it to everyone. So there might be some policies like this, and that might explain it. The other point might be that you might not be having the exact same software on your internal endpoints than the ones provided to the external. So there might be a difference in the tools or different in the antivirus. But generally, if you are having that specific version of the CrowdStrike Falcon agent and you were running Windows 10 or Windows 11 with the last updates, then you would have been subject to it.
So I think then it is true, like in our traditional old school, never install the latest patch. Always go one
Yeah.
minus, right? That would have
It
saved a
is.
lot of time, right?
It is. It is. That would have, so I would say that would have saved you on Friday,
Hmm.
but would have put you at risk every other day. So basically, yes, it would have saved you from an availability issue, but you might have been hacked before or after for plenty of other reasons because you are not running the last software. And that is where this equation is extremely tricky for cybersecurity experts and IT experts because there is no final simple answer on how to do, like update everyone or don't update everyone. And I think we need to come back to the origin of it, and we need to ensure that our vendors have the right patching processes, the right quality processes, the right testing processes before pushing massively, and they should deploy in a gradual manner. And then from user or end user perspective, there also should be something comparable where you test everything before deploying it to all endpoints, and maybe you deploy on a sub segment of your users. Contractors, for example, can be an option, or in a given location can be an option, so that even if there is an issue, you are not 100% down.
So I think I should catch John very quickly on this one because now he's heading cybersecurity in his company as well, right? So I think this will be a right time to catch
Yeah,
him or maybe give him a week and see which kind of strategic things he has changed, right? Because if I can immediately think about what to do in my company is I should restrict immediately any update comes, immediately I do batch by batch within my organization. I should not wait on Microsoft to see whether the response is positive or not. No, within my organization, any
yes.
patch comes, a policy should be go batch by batch. That I can immediately see it any kind of patch and update, right? So
It's yeah. It is a tempting. It is indeed it is the point to discuss, and it is a tempting decision. I think it can be a decision like for companies that were not yet affected and
mm,
having a fear that they might be affected in the next hours to put that kind of immediate decision to say, okay, let me stop all updates for the next 2 hours till I understand what happens. It might be something indeed that can be understood. But it's also quite important to see to what extent hackers and cyber criminals are innovative in the sense that immediately once that outages happened, there has been phishing attacks saying, okay, if you think you might be impacted, click here to apply a preventive fix. And
yeah,
that was a malware. Or so that immediately happened. So you might be thinking, okay, let's deactivate some defenses or let's but it can have dramatic effects as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, okay, okay. So as you have correctly summarized this thing very in a very good manner. So what is your advice about, because this is a cyber security domain thingy, right? So can you also elaborate like other kind of patches? How many kind of patches I would suggest, I would ask as a layman, normally in
Mhm.
organization, how it happens? Because as a normal user, you do not know what's being covered to save
Yeah.
your endpoints. So
Yeah.
how companies do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So there was some arguing about the qualification of the incident. Is it a cybersecurity incident or not? So CNN, for example, mentioned it was some kind of cybersecurity. Some did not use that term. Just to clarify why we might use the term cybersecurity in this kind of incident, cybersecurity is mainly about protecting three things. It's about protecting confidentiality, meaning that some data that is accessible only to some authorized personnel, still accessible only to those personnel and nothing from the external. So that is confidentiality, basically a contract that you have signed between you, a company, and an employee X should not be available to an employee Y, or some data that you are transferring between you and the customer A should not be visible by customer B. This is the first point, that is confidentiality. Generally, breaches to confidentiality are things like data leaks, that kind of stuff. So confidentiality is one important item to protect when it comes to cybersecurity. The second is integrity. Integrity meaning that if I store something, I find that exact same something when I come back to retrieve it, meaning that it has not been altered. This, for example, is the case for everything related to accounting, and we have a lot of standards and laws to protect this and to ensure that when you store an invoice, you find that exact same invoice. It comes with very basic checks like checksum, for example, or something that is more global with certificates and with EDAS signatures and that kind of stuff. And the third is availability. So meaning that ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability is in the domain of cybersecurity. And availability meaning that each time you have someone accessing your service, the service is up and running. And when availability is impacted, it can be considered as a cybersecurity point. However, till now, it has not been shown, and probably it's not the case, that it is a cybersecurity attack, meaning that there was not a threat actor, there was not an ill-intended user, a cyber criminal trying to hack into something or put something down. This was an issue in an update that caused it. So it can be considered as a cybersecurity topic. Coming to your point, how many endpoints are patched? I think depending on the criticality and on the policies, it is not at all surprising to see a handful of patches per day. It can be so the antivirus signatures can be updated multiple times a day, meaning that there is a new virus, a new malware that has been detected, that has been found by your vendor, Microsoft Defender or CrowdStrike or another antivirus provider. They can push updates of new signatures to your endpoint multiple times a day. And then if we look at the at the operating system level, if you're using Windows, for example, you can get easily a couple of updates per week, sometimes even little more than that. So
Mhm.
I think handful of updates pushed per day is not something that is surprising. I would say something between 1 and 5. So it's not hundreds and it is not zero. But then, depending on what you are using as installed software in your endpoint and on your laptop, you might be getting other updates from other vendors. So if you have 10 more tools, like, I don't know, you are using some tool for design, you are using some tool for accounting, you might be also getting updates from those vendors, and that can then increase the number of updates that you are getting. And those updates are generally harmless. On the contrary, either they provide new features or they patch some bugs or some security vulnerabilities.
No, but this opens a big door, right? You are letting someone come inside your home. So I
Yes,
think how your firewall or patches, whatever it is called, how
yes,
it makes sure this is
yes,
not a malware from a approved tool.
How how
Right.
how we check it?
Right. So indeed, I think the main point you mentioned is that it is from a trusted partner or from an approved tool, meaning that you know what is being sent to you is something that has been signed. So for example, if I take Windows or Microsoft, you will find that in every single package that has been sent, there is some kind of signature that cannot be falsified, that can be checked against some certificates that you have in your endpoints, and that validates that it is something that is signed by Microsoft or signed by a given vendor, and that proves that it is a valid update. So I think the main point lies there, and that's why as well it is very important that every time you are adding some tool in your tool stack used by your internal users, that you do the needed due diligence, and that is today from supply chain perspective a very important domain where you need to assess every vendor. What are their procedures? How do they update? How often do they update? For what kind of things they can update? Can you oppose or not a given update? Do they communicate upfront or not? So there is a certain number of elements that you should assess depending on the tool you are putting, depending on the reputation of the vendor, depending on the quality of the deliverables of the vendor and its software, then you can decide or not to approve that software upfront. But from the moment you approve, you can decide or not for automatic updates. As I mentioned, the classic parts where we accept automatic updates are mainly operating system and antiviruses, but the rest of the system, it's more of a manual action to update. Today, if you have Chrome, for example, there is no, unless you have activated it, like you can oppose to automatic update. If you use something from Adobe, it's the same thing. So it is manual update until you willingly go and check that it is an automatic update, which might not be the case for certain OS patches and certain antivirus patches.
So the three pillars of cyber security you just mentioned, right? Out of these three, what this patch was targeting?
That is something that I honestly don't have information on it. My understanding is that it was a software update, meaning that there was initially an intended uh, either bug fixing or either software new feature or updated feature. But to my knowledge, it was not about the antivirus signature that is getting
Ah.
updated. Yeah, so it is more a software update because it added some it changed some files within the system, within the file system. And what happened is that in that file, there was a reference to a non-managed memory part, and that created a kind of a null pointer exception, which is for developers something that is very classic bug. Depending on which tool you use, it's sometimes referred to as a segmentation fault or unauthorized memory access or null pointer exception, that kind of stuff. So basically, it was trying to access something in the memory that does not exist, and that made the system crash.
That can bring another question, right? We all know
Yes,
there is a development, UAT in production. I'm sure they must have gone through all these cycles.
yes, yes.
How they could miss this thing? There's a memory,
Yeah,
and that was not there, and maybe some global variable must be checking that one, right?
yeah,
How this can happen?
yeah. The forensics will show. So CrowdStrike CEO committed that there will be a detailed forensic analysis on this. My bet, which might not be the correct thing, but at this step, what I do believe happened is that there was some concomitant updates, meaning that CrowdStrike issued some updated file that would work on the current version of the operating system. But meanwhile, Microsoft concomitantly updated their systems. And what happened is that that created a conflict. My understanding is that this happens only if you are running the very last version of the OS and the very last version of CrowdStrike. And basically, they tested on an environment that is not exactly ISO than what some customers had, because meanwhile, between the time they did it, they developed it, deployed it, tested it, pushed it, and the time it arrived into the endpoints, Microsoft pushed some update meanwhile. The updates were not meant to be in conflict, but it might cause that because finally they didn't test in a real uh, environment because they didn't have access to basically.
Mhm.
But the forensics analysis will give that. And why also I think this is an important point, because Microsoft also, they didn't mention that they were responsible, and I don't think that they were directly responsible in what happened, but they took certain measures. And I think those measures, there is one related to the update, and there is another one which means that why you have a software that can access something that can crash will make your computer not able to start. Meaning that from Microsoft perspective, there is a flow that you might have a tool running in your system that can crash all your operating system. This situation should not happen. Whatever update a software vendor can push, it should not crash your Windows system, basically. So meaning that there is also that point that Microsoft needs to investigate, I think.
Actually, this is a very good point which you have raised, right? I can correlate with our data world, right? Any tool which you install, right? At backend, it has a metadata DB,
Yep,
right? At
yep,
backend, it stores that DB, right? Normally, all
yep,
software goes inside that DB, and that DB we normally don't use for any other OLAP system or data warehouse. We don't put it into it because this is supporting a tool at front end. Now, what
yep,
happens? A lot of people, what they do, who are not from data world, what they say is a DB. Let's store
yep,
our analysis over here. Let's reuse this DB. And I've seen examples in past because what happens now, you have a DB which is supporting a tool.
yep.
Tool is mapped with the, both are mapped with the versioning, right? They're
Yes,
compatible. Now,
yes,
you store a data, traditional data on top of it, and you start creating a front-end digital application on the same DB. Now,
right.
what happens if tool upgrade itself
Yep,
and it need to upgrade relevant DB as well,
yep,
else tool will not work. So
yep,
it's the egg in chicken. You update,
yep,
tool
yep.
will work, your digital application will not work. Sometimes
Yes,
digital application gets updated and they say okay, backend DB
yes,
updated. So
yes,
that versioning mapping is also very key. So what you're saying
exactly.
is understandable that a file comes, it see a particular version to hit, and
Yes,
another process comes, it change that version, and
yes.
it can happen. I can
Yep,
easily correlate this
yep,
example.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. You are running on top of a platform and you depend on that platform. So you are running on top of an operating system, or in your case, you are running on top of a database. You do rely on some layers so that your system can run, and everything that changes on that layer might impact you. And depending on the change, that impact can be more or less massive. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. I think we have covered this very clearly, and thank you so much again, Ahmed, for taking out time.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.